In this video, we're going to be talking about Marvel Snap Pool 3 tier list / must-save tokens to buy. If you're interested, stay tuned. Let's check it out. Right, welcome to the channel. Welcome back. Like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about some Pool 3 stuff. We are going to interweave some token buying in this, and I'm going to mention a couple Pool 4 and 5 things, because when you're talking about these things, it's really important to understand what else might be out there. The reason I got to this point was I'm now at a threshold or collection level in the game where I'm in the token store. I'm seeing what's in there. I'm getting different cards that are popping up, and tokens are so limited, you really want to know what you should buy. So this is a tier list, and it's also hopefully going to help somebody who's maybe in the similar range, or maybe even in a different range, think about what cards they want to save their tokens for. All right, so let's get right into those cards. We obviously got to start from the bottom and work our way up. This section is about cards that were sort of maybe on the fringe of the discussion. We don't look at this and say, oh, these are the ones I got to buy. Cool. It's not. They're cards that, you know, I sort of thought, I think a couple of these maybe, we were discussing this on Discord, which by the way, link in the description below, but these cards sort of can fit into a lot of decent Pool 3 type plays. So we're going to go through these. The last one that I had on this list actually is Destroyer. I know a lot of, well, maybe some people do enjoy playing him. I personally still haven't figured out quite exactly where he fits in there, but put him on the list. Also want to mention, and this is sort of the reverse order, Kingpin. I kind of like this card because you can be played with a couple other Pool 3 cards. One of them top notch, another one, it's not in this list, but it's decent, Magneto. So, you know, I just like this. Now, again, your opponent can play around this, but that means you could force them to fill up a location so you can't move cards there. So it could be a play either way. So for that purpose, I like at least mentioning it. Absorbing Man, it can be used all over the place. This is just a really good card to consider. Now, several of these cards are sort of in an archetype, the discard archetype. So I want to talk about those for a second. Hela, she's just great. But again, you need the RNG to make sure that she's able to be played towards the end or after a bunch of discards have been made. So if she gets discarded by whether it's a MODOK or anything else that you've got in your hand, Gambit, etc., then she kind of goes to the wayside. But you see a lot of her, and when she gets played, she's insanely strong. I mentioned Gambit. I think this is just actually a great fun card. You typically kind of want to play him with Morbius type stuff or the discard archetype, but it's fun to mess with your opponent and to combine with Wong or any sort of multiple reveal type situations where you start taking cards away from your opponent. I think that's going to be fun. Lockjaw, again, discard type deck, or a deck that maybe you've got some cards that aren't the greatest. You drop, you know, or they're cheaper, and so you drop them in there and hope to pull the later ones. You could literally, it doesn't have to be discard. You could have Lockjaw with trash cards and then a bunch of good cards and just go, well, I just want to pull in, you know, 3 good cards here and keep my fingers crossed that they're the best ones. So I like Lockjaw for that reason. Hellcow, again, another discard card if you're going for that archetype. And similar to Moon Knight, this one's a discard. It's similar to Gambit a little bit more power there, but it's only the discard in the hand as opposed to Gambit taking something off the board. A combination that I want to talk about, some people like this better with other cards. I still think this could be played in a sense with your makeup and in early rounds without other cards. It's Luke Cage and Hazmat for 4 power. And if you play this late, you could really sort of wreak havoc on your opponent's cards. So it's only 4 points. Luke Cage, drop him first. If you don't want to put him out there to let your opponent know what you're going to do, okay, fine. You could play him later. You could put him early and they just don't know what's happening. They could guess to where to put a Cosmo to keep a Hazmat from happening. But, or if they have a Luke Cage, which I doubt most people have a Luke Cage just sitting in their hand. But I just like how these 2 cards can combine. They're pretty cheap as far as the play in the field, and they can go with really anything. Again, they get better with Wongs and multiple reveals and all that sort of thing. But if you're just trying to hurt your opponent and not hurt yourself for 4 energy, that's not too bad. Daredevil, I really like this card. Again, it's cheap energy, and it helps you with some of the other cards that you might get or that we're going to talk about later. You just can foresee turn 5. Now, some people could mess with you with this, but that means they're sacrificing their turn 5 to mess with you. So I think that's a win-win. And then last but not least on this sort of discussion set. Ultron, especially with what's happening right now with the hot location, you know, you're playing Patriot or something along those lines. Ultron can get a lot of bots out in the field. And now, in fairness, I passed on Ultron. I passed on Destroyer. I didn't get any of the other ones in there yet, but yeah, I passed on those two, but I wanted to mention them. All right, the next three that arguably could be in the tier above, we've got Zola. He destroys a random friendly card. Now, I do think that you're probably going to need other cards with him, obviously, because he's destroying something. You want to copy it, and you want maybe multiple reveals to do this. But you need good cards to do it. So I was kind of like, it's a good card, but you do need other good cards to go with them. So I did want to mention it. Doom, again, especially with the archetype or the hot location as is shooting this video, which is the DC one, which gives you additional power. And he's going to give you some pretty strong bots. And in that mindset, Patriot. Again, hot location right now with that DC one, which gives you extra points. You're seeing a lot of Patriot plays right now. A lot of Mystiques being copied or copying Patriot. Again, I passed on Patriot mainly because I don't have a number of other cards that I really liked. It was, you know, Ultron, Doom, etc. I want some of those cards as even more buff, strong plays at the end. For that reason, I didn't get them. But again, it's something to think about. All right, now the last group before we talk about sort of the top 5 or 6, and these, as you can see, these are arguably fantastic must-have cards, but I did have them in a slight tier below. The first one that I want to mention is Taskmaster. You know, just the fact that he can reveal or copy a card that you just played, he can get super high, again, if you have other cards. So for that reason, he wasn't there. He's sort of at the bottom of this particular list. Wong is just a great card. I mean, he gets some insane good plays going on with him. He's an ongoing, so he can be countered in multiple ways, remember, because like if you stop his ongoing with Enchantress or you drop a Cosmo there, that means the other reveals aren't going to happen, you know, so it's kind of Now Dracula, I would say you could argue this would be in the top set of buys, and I would not disagree with you. Dracula literally has 0 counter. There is, I mean, you can move him with Magneto or Arrow or something like that if you get lucky, if you have the same play, but there's nothing you can really do with him. I mean, it's just the only thing that counters this guy is if he somehow discards a bad card from your opponent's hand and it's a low power. Okay, well, but most people who are playing him, they do, in fact, have high power cards that are normally sitting there late. So, I mean, even if it's America Chavez, you're like, okay, I discarded everything and that's all that's left. Cool. That's still 9 points. Not bad for a 4-point play. If he pops up, even though he's not my top, I probably would buy him. Now, outside the top 3, so the 4 through 6, I've got these. Now, Death, this is a card, again, you could argue that's like, well, don't you need a bunch of other cards for this one? Isn't that an archetype? Yeah, true. You're right. It is, but it is an insanely powerful card that can get really, really strong. So for that purpose, did have it in the top 6. Then had Wave. You see, Wave is a great combo card where you see it played on turn 3 or sometimes even later. And you get cards cheaper played on either turn 4 or 5 that you might not have been able, or even turn 6 that you might not been able to play. So you'll see maybe, you know, a Wave with a Death that's out there that maybe didn't get built, you know, didn't get destroyed enough. It's kind of like, all right, well, Death's guaranteed 4 right now. And if you did destroy something, Death gets cheaper by that amount. So a Sarah Death combo is pretty solid. In the same sense, there's a Sarah where the ongoing card or the cards in your hand cost 1 less. So that's, again, pretty solid. Now, how can you play Wave Sarah? Maybe you do Wave, then Sarah, and then something that's even cheaper. I don't know. So, like, obviously, I don't have these. I haven't built them. There's a bunch of decks out there that sort of play off these combos, SheHulks, etc. So these 3 cards are in the next up buy options. So now the top 3, I just mentioned her, SheHulk. This card, I swear, is everywhere. People love using her. It costs 1 less energy for each unspent energy the previous turn. So you've got to think about how you're going to play it. In that sense, it's sort of like a Octonaut or Infonaut, if you want to call it the proper name, sense where it's, you got to make sure you're wise about what you do the turn before. But it's a lot of power to get out there. People like to spread this around, double it up, all that sort of thing. It's a great, fantastic card. All right, Mystique is the next one. Mystique, she copies, and it is such a good card and so strong where you can, if it's an ongoing ability, so you've got to be smart about what it's copied. But I really do enjoy and see how she sort of plays out there and copying something similar to Taskmaster, and she's fairly cheap. She's 3, so it's kind of like, all right, so you can double up on a boost or whatever you might be using, Zabu type thing that you want to have out there. And I think for that reason, it's like, okay, that's a good card for 3 cost. And then the top number 1 pool 3 card that you're gonna want to buy if it pops up is Arrow. This is sort of a must-have card. A lot of end game players love this card. It is a control type card. I have played with this card a lot. There is some RNG to it. You've really got to understand the playing field. It can be difficult to play, but man, can it disrupt the field. I got lucky and did get this one in some of my early caches. I played it for a long time. I do still enjoy it. I've in the last 24 hours, I have switched back to my discard archetype just because I needed a change of pace, because it was up and down and up and down and up and down. I was like, you know what? I love Arrow, but right now I need to switch it up. But so I think Arrow, number 1, without a doubt, she's just a fantastic card to have. Again, these are the things that when you're just getting into pool 3, or you're looking at pool 3 and wondering what to spend tokens on, or the tier list, whatever you want to look at it, this is how I would recommend spending those tokens, or the priority you want to give to cards, or just the general tier list. Now, like I mentioned, I do want to discuss some pool 4 and pool 5s, because that might pop up in your store. When you're talking tier lists, you do want to understand what else is out there. And again, disclaimer that this is more of a early pool 3 thing. So I might mention some cards, but how are you not saying to get that? It's a great card. I'll get to that a little bit later in a different video, honestly, where I'm just talking about, hey, look, straight up, this card, if you got most of your collection set, you got to have this, because this is a must-have to play. All right, so that's sort of my disclaimer here. Some of these are lists that are favored that, like I said, can be top-notch, but you need a lot of other cards. And again, I know some other ones had that, but you get the point. So I still would think it would not be wise. And again, I think I mentioned earlier, but if not, the reason I wanted to talk about all this stuff was I had Galactus in my token store, and I needed 6,000 tokens, and I was short by like 2,200. And I was like, you know what? I don't get enough tokens to pin this. I need so many other cards. So for that reason, I want to talk about these cards. All right, first up, pool 4 here. There is one card in here, especially right now, that is an absolute must buy, and that's Shuri. If Shuri pops up in your store, even if you're looking for, you need a ton of pool 3 cards, you need to buy her. Absolutely, without a doubt, must buy. There's even talk of people thinking she's going to get nerfed. That will hurt if something happens, if they make her a 5-3, 5-4. We were talking about that on the Discord a little bit. I sort of hope they don't do that. I get she's a powerful card. Anytime people are spending tokens on a card like that, oh man, I'd consider, if I was second dinner, refunding half of those or something. Granted, it's a good card, but still, it's like, would someone have, this becomes a 5-4, would I have spent, that many tokens on it? I might not have, or give players the option, like, look, take those tokens back, but you were taking the card back. Okay, cool. And how hard is that to do, right? Maybe it's not hard. Maybe it is. I don't know. Now, that's the only one that I'm going to say is a must buy at this point in the game. Again, hence the disclaimer. But I do want to mention some other ones. Bast. A lot of people really do like Bast. Just for setting the cards in your hand to 3. Again, you got to be smart about which cards you're doing that to. So make sure it's in the proper deck. Super Scroll, just taking on all the ongoing effects, can be really, really strong. I think that's a great card. We also talked about Valkyrie. Now this one, a lot of people do like this. I think this is a situation where maybe you're playing a bunch of trash. Maybe you have a hand there. Maybe you've got a card that's only 1 point, a Gambit. Those sort of things where it's just like, and then you drop this and it makes them all 3. Okay, now for my personal taste, I have to admit that when I see this, I'm not in love with it, but there are a lot of people out there who do love this card and do like to use it. So I want to mention it for that reason. Another one out here, and honestly, we were talking about it for Devil Dinosaur just because it adds random 4 and 5 cost cards to your hand for 3 costs. You could get a really good 4 or 5. But Devil Dinosaur, adding to that deck, or any deck that you're trying to build up, or discard decks even, I think Coulson's actually a good card regardless. I mean, just for three energy, and you know, seeing where that you might get a couple cards that you didn't already have in your deck, I like it. I like it. So for that purpose, I think it's decent. And then one that I had originally on as a buy, Black Panther. When we were talking about this sort of got shot down a little bit. They think it was a good season card, but maybe not that great anymore. Anyway, I wanted to mention it as an honorable mention. All right, so let's jump to pool 5. And again, disclaimer, not going to repeat it. There's a lot of good cards in here, but at this point in the game, what would you actually, early pool 3, mid pool 3, what would you want to get in here and spend the tokens on? So there was only, well, 1/2. 1 at this point, Darkhawk, just getting some extra points for whatever your opponent's got in your deck. Now, if your opponent is playing some sort of deck that is pulling more cards out of their deck, then Darkhawk loses its value. So think about that. But Darkhawk is a very, very popular and strong card. And the other one here is actually Thanos, believe it or not. The main reason for this is this can get, if you have Quinjet, this card gets stronger because it makes the cards cheaper. Obviously, that didn't start in your deck. So I think for this reason, Thanos is probably worth mentioning at this point. After that, while these other cards are good, I wouldn't recommend buying anything. Like I mentioned, I had Galactus in my store, and I could have pinned it and I didn't. I again, needed too many. But besides that, the other, you know, there are, I think, good cards in here. Sauron is a card that people do love a lot. Null, if you're going for any of that destroy type thing. And again, if somehow you could find a way to play destroyer and null together, okay, that makes a ton of sense. I think that's great. But I mean, unless it's a 7-turn game and you have magic, it's sort of hard to do. Surfer was a huge card, but obviously got nerfed. In that same sense, Zabu, obviously, we didn't think we should necessarily spend on those, but they are good cards. So that's what I've got. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you want to come discuss this a bit on Discord or any of the future tier lists that we're going to put together, come to Discord, chat about it. We literally chatted about it in our Snapchat just to sort of brainstorm, and I wanted to know what people think. We've got several different levels of players in there. I'm obviously on the earlier end of it, so I like talking to people and seeing what they think. And, you know, I might be doing a video based on a certain perspective. And anyway, it's fun to debate. If you like the video and found it helpful, please consider hammering down on that like button. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.